The empire stretched across 12 star systems, and at its heart sat Empress. Her obsidian scales caught the light of 1,000 crystals as she moved through the grand hall of her palace. She was tall, even by standards, and her presence alone could silence a room of diplomats or generals. When she spoke, worlds listened. When she gave orders, they were followed without question. They had built their empire on a simple belief: perfection was everything. Strength, beauty, and pure bloodlines determined worth. The weak were cast aside. The flawed were hidden. This was how it had always been and had never questioned it. She herself was the perfect example of ideals, powerful, intelligent, and without any visible flaw. But the universe has a way of testing even the strongest beliefs. Princess was born on a night when 3 moons aligned over the capital city. It should have been a celebration. Instead, the palace fell silent when the physicians delivered their report. The child's left leg had not formed correctly. Her left arm shook with tremors that no medicine could stop. The finest doctors in 12-star systems examined her, but none could fix what had gone wrong. By tradition, such a child would be sent away to distant facilities, hidden from public view, and eventually forgotten. Many advisors suggested this path to the Empress. Some even demanded it, arguing that an imperfect princess would weaken the empire's image. Refused. Perhaps it was because was her youngest daughter, born after years of trying for another child. Perhaps it was the way the baby looked up at her with curious golden eyes, completely unaware that the world had already judged her. Whatever the reason, the Empress made a choice that surprised everyone: would stay. But staying did not mean belonging. As grew, she was kept in the western wing of the palace. Tutors came to teach her. Physicians monitored her condition. Servants attended to her needs. But she was never seen at state functions. She never attended the grand balls that her older sisters danced at every season. She watched the celebrations from her window, pressing her small hand against the glass as music floated up from the halls below. Loved her daughter. She visited when she could, brought her gifts, and told her stories of the empire. But even the Empress could not change what her people believed. To show in public would invite criticism, questions, and doubt. It was better, she told herself, to keep the girl safe and comfortable in her own private world. 17 cycles passed. Grew into a thoughtful young woman with her mother's golden eyes and a mind sharper than most gave her credit for. She read everything she could find about the galaxy. She learned 3 languages and could debate philosophy with her tutors. But she had never danced at a ball. She had never felt what it was like to be part of something larger than her quiet rooms. Then the humans came. The Human Confederation was a young power in the galaxy, barely 3 centuries old in space. They considered them a minor species, energetic and curious, but lacking the long history and refined culture of the older empires. Still, they had proven useful as trading partners, and diplomatic relations had been established. Now, a delegation from Earth was visiting for the first time. Empress planned a grand banquet to display her empire's wealth and power. Diplomats from a dozen worlds would attend. Musicians would play. Dancers would perform the traditional rites of display. It would be a night that demonstrated supremacy to the entire galaxy. Heard about the banquet from her servants. A human delegation, real humans from Earth itself. She had read so much about them, fascinated by their strange customs and their short, intense lives. They lived less than a single century, yet they seemed to pack more passion into their brief existence than many species managed in. She wanted to see them, just once, just a glimpse. "Mother," she said during evening visit, "may I attend the banquet?" The Empress's scales shifted, a sign of discomfort she usually hid well. "You know why that is not possible." "I would not need to be seen. There is a balcony above the main hall. I could watch from there in the alcove behind the pillars. No one would notice me." His voice was steady, but her golden eyes held a desperate hope she could not quite hide. Hesitated. Every instinct told her to refuse. It was too risky. Someone might see. questions would be asked. But then she looked at her daughter, really looked at her. When at last asked for anything, she accepted her isolation without complaint year after year. She never argued, never demanded, never made her mother's life difficult. And now she was asking for something so small, just to watch. "Very well," the Empress said finally. "You may watch from the alcove, but you must stay hidden and you must leave before the banquet ends." His face lit up with such pure joy that felt something twist in her chest. Had she really made her daughter so grateful for such a small thing? On the night of the banquet, made her way to the balcony alcove, helped by a trusted servant who knew all the quiet passages of the palace. She wore a simple dark gown that would help her blend into the shadows, and she settled into a chair behind the thick stone pillars where she could see without being seen. The hall below was magnificent. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow light across the polished floors. Diplomats in their finest clothes moved between tables laden with food from 100 worlds. Music played, the complex mathematical harmonies that they considered the height of artistic achievement. And there among the crowd were the humans. They looked so strange compared to the scaled and feathered and furred species around them. Soft skin in various shades of brown and pink, hair on their heads instead of crests or scales. They seemed small and fragile, yet they moved through the crowd with an easy confidence that surprised her. Then the dancing began. The rites of display were demanding. Every movement had to be precise, every step perfectly timed to the music. Had watched recordings of these dances 1,000 times, memorizing the patterns she would never perform. Her sisters had trained for years to master them. The dances were a demonstration of physical perfection, proof that the dancers were worthy of their place in society. Watched the dancers spin and leap across the floor. They were beautiful, she thought, perfect and graceful and everything she could never be. Her left hand trembled in her lap, and she pressed it down with her right, as if she could stop the reminder of her own flaws. She did not notice the young human man who had slipped away from the banquet, carrying a tray of empty glasses toward the service area. She did not see him pause at the base of the stairs, looking up at the balcony with curious brown eyes. But he noticed her. Was 24 years old, a server assigned to the diplomatic delegation, because he spoke 3 alien languages and knew how to keep his mouth shut. He had grown up on a space station orbiting Neptune, the son of 2 engineers who had taught him that the universe was full of wonders worth exploring. He saw the girl on the balcony, sitting alone in the shadows. She was, he could tell by her scales, but there was something about the way she watched the dancers that made his heart ache. It was the look of someone standing outside a window, watching a party they could never join. He knew that look. He had worn it himself once as a kid with leg braces who watched other children run and play. Set down his tray. He should get back to work. He should mind his own business. Talking to royalty, and from her position in the palace, she had to be someone important, was definitely not in his job description. But his grandmother's voice echoed in his memory. The universe gives us moments. What we do with them is what makes us human. He climbed the service stairs. Heard the footsteps before she saw him. Her hearts, both of them, began to race. Had she been discovered? Would her mother be angry? She pressed herself deeper into the shadows, hoping whoever it was would pass by. But the footsteps stopped right beside her alcove, and then a voice spoke. A strange voice, speaking accented but clear. "That is a good spot for watching," the voice said, "but not such a good spot for enjoying." Turned to find a human standing there. He was young, with dark hair and warm brown eyes that crinkled at the corners. He wore the simple uniform of a server, and he was smiling at her in a way that suggested he found the situation slightly funny. "You should not be here," she said, her voice sharper than she intended. "Servants do not speak to," she stopped herself. She had almost said royalty, which would reveal who she was. "To mysterious ladies hiding on balconies." The human's smile widened. "Sorry, I saw you up here and I thought you looked lonely." He tilted his head, studying her. "Why are you sitting alone when there is music playing?" The question was so direct, so unexpected, that did not know how to answer. In society, no one asked such personal questions without proper introduction and social standing. This human had simply walked up and spoken to her like she was a regular person. "I prefer to watch," she said carefully. "Do you?" Moved closer, and now he could see her more clearly in the dim light. His eyes traveled to her left hand, which trembled slightly against her gown. His gaze moved to how she sat, with her weight shifted away from her left leg. Understanding dawned on his face, but not the pity she expected. Instead, he nodded slowly, as if something made sense now. "My grandmother used to watch too," he said. "From her chair by the window. She would watch the dancers at festivals and tap her fingers on the arm of her chair, keeping time with the music." "Why only watch?" asked, surprised to find herself curious. "She could not walk. Her legs stopped working when she was 60 years old." Leaned against the pillar, his posture relaxed, but she danced anyway. Blinked. How can someone dance if they cannot walk? She had a chair with wheels. We would push her onto the dance floor, and she would spin and move her arms and sway to the music. My grandfather would hold her hands and guide her. His voice grew soft with memory. She danced at my parents' wedding. She danced at every family celebration until she was 93 years old. And when she died, my grandfather said he could still feel her dancing beside him. Stared at him. The idea was so strange, so completely opposite to everything she had been taught. But that is not real dancing, not proper dancing. "Says who?" Raised an eyebrow. "On Earth, we have 1,000 ways to dance. We have people who dance in wheelchairs and win competitions. We have people with one leg who waltz with crutches. We have people who are blind who move to music they have never seen others dance to. We have children who cannot hear but who feel the vibrations through the floor and dance with their whole hearts." He pushed himself off the pillar and moved to stand in front of her. "My cousin lost both his legs in an accident when he was 16. Everyone said he would never dance again. Now he competes in seated ballroom dancing and has won more trophies than anyone else in our family." He smiled. "He says dancing was never about having perfect legs. It was about having a willing heart." Felt something strange happening in her chest, a tightness that was not quite pain and not quite hope. "Do not think this way," she said quietly. "Dancing is a demonstration of physical perfection. If you cannot perform the movements correctly, you should not dance at all. It would be shameful." "Why?" The simple question stopped her. Why? Because that was how it had always been. Because imperfection was weakness. Because... "I do not know," she admitted. "It is simply our way." Was quiet for a moment, watching the dancers below. Then he turned back to her. "May I tell you something? Something that humans believe?" She nodded. "We believe that dancing is not about perfection. It is about joy." He spoke slowly, choosing his words with care. "When you dance, you are telling the universe that you are alive, that you feel the music, that you have something inside you that wants to move and be free. It does not matter if your steps are perfect. It matters that your heart is in it." He extended his hand toward her, a simple gesture, palm up, waiting. "Would you like to dance?" His breath caught. Her left hand trembled harder and she pressed it against her leg. "I cannot. My leg will not hold me. My arm shakes. I would fall. I would embarrass." She stopped, but they both knew what she meant. She would embarrass herself. She would embarrass her mother. She would prove what everyone already believed, that she was broken. Did not lower his hand. "I will not let you fall. And there is no one here to see but me. The music is playing. Your foot is tapping. Yes, I noticed. You want to dance. I can see it in your eyes." Looked down and realized he was right. Her right foot was moving slightly, keeping time with the music drifting up from below. She had not even noticed. "I do not know how," she whispered. "I never learned. There was no point." "Then let me teach you." His voice was gentle. Not the dances, those look complicated and honestly a little stiff. I will teach you how humans dance. How we really dance, not the formal stuff, but the way we dance at home when no one is watching. It is easy. Anyone can do it. Anyone. Anyone? His hand was still extended, patient and steady. All you have to do is take my hand and trust me. Far below, in the shadows of an archway, Empress had noticed something. One of the human servers was missing from his station. Her security chief, ever vigilant, had tracked him to the same balcony where her daughter was hiding. She should have been angry. This was a breach of protocol, a potential security risk, a situation that needed immediate intervention. She began moving toward the service stairs, ready to put a stop to whatever was happening. But something made her pause at the bottom of the stairs. The music was playing a softer melody now, and she could hear voices from the balcony above, her daughter's voice and a human voice, speaking quietly. She moved silently up a few steps, staying in the shadows, and looked. She saw the human standing there with his hand extended. She saw his face, caught between fear and longing. She watched as her daughter looked at that offered hand like it was the most terrifying and wonderful thing she had ever seen. "I cannot," said again, but this time her voice wavered. The human, heard him call, did not move. He did not pressure or plead. He simply smiled and said, "That is all right. You do not have to, but I want you to know something. Where I come from, the bravest dancers are not the ones with the best technique. They are the ones who get up even when they are afraid of falling." He lowered his hand and sat down beside her instead, settling onto the floor with his back against the pillar. "May I stay anyway? The music is nice and the view is good." Looked at him with surprise. "You want to stay, even though I will not dance?" "I want to stay because you seem like interesting company." He grinned. "And because you are the only person at this party who has not looked at me like I am some kind of exotic pet." A small laugh escaped her, a sound had not heard from her daughter in years. The Empress pressed her hand against the wall, steadying herself. When had last laughed? "Tell me about Earth," said. "I have read so much, but reading is not the same as hearing from someone who has been there." And talked. He told her about oceans that stretched to the horizon and mountains that touched the clouds. He told her about cities that never slept and villages where everyone knew your name. He told her about festivals where strangers danced in the streets and weddings, where even the grandmothers kicked off their shoes and joined the fun. "Dancing is communication," he explained. "When words are not enough, we dance. When we are happy, we dance. When we are sad, we dance. When we want to tell someone we love them but we do not know how to say it, we hold them close and move with the music, and somehow they understand." That sounds, searched for the right word, beautiful. It is, looked at her. And it has room for everyone. That is the thing about human dancing, there are no rules about who gets to participate. Old, young, fast, slow, standing, sitting, walking, rolling. If you feel the music, you can dance. The music below shifted again, becoming something slower, and stood and offered his hand one more time. "Last chance," he said softly. "The song is perfect for beginners, and I promise I will catch you if you stumble." In the shadows of the stairs watched her daughter's face. She saw the war playing out in his eyes, 17 years of being told she could not, should not, must not, against this strange human simple offer. "Take my hand, trust me, dance." Reached out. Her trembling left hand found his steady right one, and she let him help her to her feet. The moment stood, her leg nearly buckled, but was ready. His arm came around her waist, firm and supportive, not controlling. He took most of her weight without making it obvious, positioning himself so that she could lean on him as much as she needed. "Just feel the music," he said quietly. "Do not think about steps. Do not think about what you look like. Just listen and move." They began to sway. It was not a real dance, not by standards. There were no precise movements, no complicated patterns, no demonstration of physical prowess. It was just two people moving together to the music, finding a rhythm that worked for both of them. When stumbled, adjusted. When her arm trembled, he held her steady. When she froze, unsure of what to do next, he simply kept swaying until she found her confidence again. "You are doing great," he said. "See, you are dancing." "This does not feel like dancing," said, but there was wonder in her voice. "It feels like flying," suggested with a grin. "Yes," she laughed, a real laugh, surprised and delighted. "Yes, that is exactly what it feels like." They continued to move together and slowly began to relax. Her body remembered what her mind had tried to forget: the joy of movement, the pleasure of music, the simple happiness of being alive in a moment worth remembering. Her scales, which had been tight with tension, began to shimmer. This was a sign of strong emotion, usually kept hidden, controlled, but did not try to stop it. For the first time in her life, she let herself feel without shame. From the stairs, Empress watched her daughter transform. The girl who had spent her life being careful, being quiet, being invisible, that girl was glowing. Her golden eyes were bright with tears she did not bother to hide. Her smile was wider than had ever seen it. And this human, this server from a minor species, this young man who had no reason to care about a hidden princess, he looked at like she was the most important person in the room. Not with pity, not with curiosity, just with kindness. The song ended, but they kept swaying for a moment longer, neither wanting to break the spell. Finally, stepped back, still holding hands to keep her steady. "See," he said, "you can dance. You just needed someone to show you how." Looked at him with an expression could not quite read. It was gratitude, yes, but also something deeper. A door had opened in her mind, a door she had thought was locked forever. "Why?" she asked. "Why did you come up here? Why did you care?" Thought about the question. "When I was young, I had braces on my legs. I could not run like other children. I would watch them play and wish I could join them." He shrugged. "Someone showed me that I could play in my own way. They gave me that gift. I guess I wanted to pass it on." "Humans are strange," said, but she was smiling. "We prefer unique." He helped her back to her chair, making sure she was comfortable before stepping away. "I should get back to work before someone notices I am missing. But I am glad I came up here. I am glad I met you. I do not even know your full name." "And you?" She hesitated for only a moment. "Princess." His eyes widened slightly, but he recovered quickly. "Well, Princess, it was an honor to dance with you." He bowed, a silly, exaggerated bow that made her laugh again. "May you have many more dances in your future." He turned to leave and froze. Empress stood at the top of the stairs, her obsidian scales gleaming in the dim light. She was every bit as imposing as her reputation suggested, tall, powerful, and utterly unreadable. Dropped to one knee immediately. His heart was pounding. He had just danced with the princess of the empire without permission. He had touched royalty. He had probably broken 100 protocols and laws he did not even know existed. "Your Majesty," he said, keeping his eyes on the floor. "I apologize, I meant no disrespect. I—" "Stand up." He stood, forcing himself to meet her gaze. If he was going to be punished, he would face it with whatever dignity he had left. But was not looking at him. She was looking at her daughter. His face had gone pale, her scales tight with fear. "Mother, I can explain. I asked to watch and he did not know who I was at first and he was only being kind and—" "You were laughing," said quietly. "Stopped what?" "When you were dancing, you were laughing." The Empress moved closer and saw something in her eyes he had not expected: pain. "I have not heard you laugh like that in years." I did not know what to say. Turn 2. "Tell me about this dancing of yours. Tell me about your grandmother in her chair and your cousin with his trophies." Blinked, confused but cautiously hopeful. "Your Majesty." "My daughter says you told her that humans have 1,000 ways to dance. I want to understand." Her voice was steady, but something underneath it was cracking. I want to understand how you looked at her and saw a dancer when all her life, everyone, including me, has seen only her limitations. The balcony was silent except for the distant music from below. Thought carefully before answering. Your Majesty, I did not see limitations. I saw someone who wanted to dance but had been told she could not. Those are two different things. He glanced at, then back at the Empress. Humans believe that the desire to do something is the beginning of the ability to do it. We find ways. We adapt. We create new methods when the old ones do not work. It is how we have survived. But she cannot perform the dances, said. Her body will not allow it. Then she performs different dances, spread his hands. Or you change the dances to include her, or you create new dances that work for her body. The point is not the specific movements. The point is the joy, the connection, the expression. A dance that no one can join is not a celebration. It is a test. Was quiet for a long moment. Her eyes moved from two, taking in her daughter's flushed face and bright eyes. She thought about all the celebrations had missed, all the times she had chosen her empire's expectations over her daughter's happiness, all the years she had told herself she was protecting when really she had been hiding her. Show me, she said finally. Mother's voice was small. Show me how humans dance, both of you. The Empress's voice was not commanding now, it was almost pleading. Show me what I have been missing. She looked back at him, uncertain but willing. Then she nodded. He helped her to her feet again, and they began to sway. The music from below was softer now, a gentle melody that seemed to float up to them like a gift. May I? Asked, stepping closer. Of course, said. There is always room for one more. The Empress, ruler of 12 star systems, joined her daughter and a human server on a balcony overlooking her own banquet. She placed one hand on his shoulder and one hand on his arm, and she let him guide them all in a simple, swaying dance. She did not know the steps, she did not understand the rhythm, but she felt her daughter relax against her, felt the tension of 17 years begin to melt away. She heard laugh again, that wonderful, surprising sound, and she felt tears on her own face. I am sorry, she whispered to her daughter. I am so sorry. Looked up at her mother with those golden eyes. You are here now, that is what matters. They danced until the music ended. Then they stood together in the darkness, an empress learning to let go of perfection, a princess discovering she had never been broken, and a server who had simply seen a lonely girl and chosen kindness. Below, the banquet continued, oblivious to the small revolution taking place above. Diplomats discussed treaties. Dancers performed their perfect routines. The galaxy turned as it always had. But in the western wing of the palace, something had changed, and in the years that followed, the change would spread. Empress began slowly. Too fast would cause rebellion among the traditional factions, but she started inviting to public events, letting her be seen. She commissioned studies on adaptive technologies from human worlds. She established the first programs in history designed to help those with physical differences participate in cultural activities. The old guard resisted. There were arguments and protests and threats, but had seen her daughter's face in the light of that balcony, and she could not unsee it. She had heard laugh, and she could not it. The Empire's obsession with perfection had nearly cost her something precious, and she would not let that happen again. Returned to Earth when the diplomatic mission ended. He was offered a position in the court. The Empress herself made the offer, but he politely declined. He had a family waiting for him, a life to return to. But he and exchanged contact information, and for years afterward they sent each other messages across the stars. She told him about her progress, her first public dance, her work with the adaptive programs. He told her about his grandmother's final years, about his cousin's latest trophy, about the small ways that humans kept finding to include everyone in the dance of life. The word for worthy had meant without flaw for 10,000 years, but languages change. meaning shift. A generation later, young would use the same word to mean something closer to having value. And when they were asked about the change, they would tell the story of a princess and a server and a dance on a balcony. They would tell the story of a human who saw someone hiding in the shadows and thought, "That person looks lonely. I should help." They would tell the story of an empire that learned, slowly and painfully, that perfection was not the highest virtue, that kindness was. And they would tell the story of a dance that changed everything. The end.